Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It is Rebecca Levis here for Sparky's Torah Time, and we're going to be studying the book of Genesis, and we only have one or two left portions of scripture for this book of Genesis. And today's story concludes with a story of redemption. Redemption between brothers, redemption between those that have offended, have betrayed, and have lied. And it's a wonderful way to end this year because it's about starting over, about reconciliation, about mending your past, about starting new, starting fresh by drawing near. And this is what this story is about today. So when you look at the end of 2020, I pray that this message today would be one to move you forward, to take you out of one place where perhaps you felt stuck, you felt betrayed, you felt disappointed, you felt many things that were negative. And I pray that now God will give you a new vision for 2021. And with a new vision comes a new decision. So I pray that as you listen to this teaching today, that God will drop a vision into your heart of what things could be and should be in your life. And with that vision, I pray that He will give you a decision that will change your life. So let's get started, and I will share my screen with you today. And we will start with, first I have to start with my glasses because I can't see. I'm getting older, you know. We're going to start with the prayer that we say prior to Torah study. And we'll say it together. It's in blue. And let's say it. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzevanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sets us apart with his commandments and commands us to busy ourselves. That means to meditate on and to take inside like you're getting food. Busy yourselves with these words of Torah. Amen. So before we get started with the actual teaching, I want to tell you that you can jump into this cycle at any time. It's a continuing, never-ending story. It involves others in the Bible, and it also involves you. So jump in. You can order this book on Amazon, A Year Through the Torah for Christians, and it's ordered it usually comes within a week to 10 days, and it's by John Parsons. And the price of the book is, the workbook is $38. And then I want to also show you that in these teachings, you're going to see bracketed green words. It looks like this. And it comes from this dictionary. So if you have taken my Torah class and know some Hebrew and you want to look these words up for yourself, this is the book we use. I wanted to show it to you at the very beginning. And it's based on the commentaries of Samson Raphael Hirsch, and a fantastic book to put in your study of the scriptures. So there you go. So today's parashah or portion of scripture is called Vayigash, and Vayigash means and he drew near. We're in Genesis 44, beginning verse 18 through 47:27, and then we're going to swing into the book of Ephesians and also into the book of Luke 24. So let's get started. Before I do, I'm going to assume that there's some new people that don't really understand where we've been with our history of the Jewish people. And we're going to be talking today about three key figures. We're going to be talking about Joseph, Judah, and Benjamin. And so I want to start with this family tree so that you can see how it's all related when we start talking about these three individuals. So we have Abraham, the father of our faith, coming from Terah. And then it shows the family tree coming down with the sons Isaac and Jacob. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are considered the three patriarchs of our faith. for the Jewish people and also the Gentiles. And we follow this down through the beloved wife Rachel. And Rachel has two sons with Jacob. And these two sons are Joseph and Benjamin. And like I said, we're going to be talking today about Joseph, Benjamin, but also Judah. Judah came from Jacob through the other wife, Leah, and Leah and Rachel were sisters. And those that came from Leah, there were 7 children. And I listed them in the order of how they were born. But here you can see there's 7 children. Judah was the middle one out of the 7, Dinah being a female. And so I wanted to show you that he held Judah the middle position because we'll be talking about that later. So it's about the father Jacob, the 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph now is second in command in Egypt under Pharaoh. And the story begins with Judah drawing near to Joseph and about this brother Benjamin. So I'm going to review from last week so you can see what happened. So Joseph's brother, remember, came to Egypt during a famine for food. And last week, the story ended with Joseph giving the brothers food and sending them back to their father Jacob with their brother Benjamin. And in the sack of Benjamin, Joseph had placed a silver cup, his silver divining cup. And they sent him back. And shortly after they all left, Joseph sent with them, some of his men to follow them. And they came and searched all the sacks, and they were looking for this silver cup. And after being quite indignant, all the brothers said, "We don't have the cup," but they actually found the cup in Benjamin's sack. So all the brothers were terrified, and they were all brought back to Egypt to stand in front of Joseph. And this is where our story begins. So Joseph says, because you did this, he says, I want you to leave Benjamin here as a slave, and you other 10 can go home. Now imagine, they have already grieved their father grieved their father Jacob over the fact that he thought Joseph was dead, but he's really second in command. And now the other brother, Benjamin, Joseph wants to keep with him. Oh my goodness, this story is so dramatic. So it begins now. Here we are. They're all shaking in their boots and they're standing before Joseph. And he's saying, go on back, take the food, take belongings, take some more money, but leave Benjamin here. So here's what happens. First, let's look at how Judah approached Joseph. And that's where we get the name of this parashah, Vayigash. It means approached. Judah approached his brother Joseph. Now, what's interesting about this is that because it's called Vayigash, let me show you something more about this word. Nagash means to come near, to be in a period of rest, to return to a spiritual repose. Now, you can find this word here in our etymological book, but it's a picture about not just approaching the brother, approaching Joseph, but it's coming closer without any hindrances. And it means to come close with the right heart. Remember, return to a spiritual repose. When we're in the right spiritual repose, our heart is at rest. So this story is about coming near and creating a heart that's in a period of rest. There's no barriers. And in order to do this, Judah had to have the right heart. So this is a beautiful picture that's going to unfold in the end of this story, and we'll swing into the New Testament and show you how it relates to the Messiah, Yeshua. So in Matthew 5:23, Jesus said, Yeshua, go and make things right before coming with your offering. Now, this is a direct relationship to Yeshua, referring back to the brothers who didn't believe him and who didn't receive him but rejected him. He says, make your heart right before you come before the Father. And in this picture, Joseph is the one who they're approaching. And this time, Judah's approaching with the right heart instead of the heart he had way, way back when they decided to throw their brother Joseph in a pit. So I wanted to show you this name, Nagash, meaning so that when we get to the end of this parashah, you can tie it all back in and it'll all make sense. So keep those things in mind, coming close with the right heart in order to make your heart at rest. So let's look at the story. Judah asked to approach Joseph. And here's how he starts. You are as Pharaoh himself. My father Jacob's heart is closely bound to Benjamin. And he recounts the whole story back to his brother Joseph. He doesn't know he's Joseph, but he tells him the whole story about the father Jacob and the loss of this brother Joseph and how Joseph and Benjamin were brothers. And now if I leave Benjamin here with you, imagine how my father's going to feel. He says, if I don't bring him back, he'll go to the grave in sorrow. Then Judah said to Joseph, instead, I will bear the shame. And at this point in this dramatic story, Judah offers himself as a slave in order to send Benjamin back to the father. And he says, now I'm willing to be your slave. Now, isn't this interesting? It's Judah who was going to sell him as a slave. Let's throw him in a pit and then let's sell him for money. And now he's begging to become the slave in front of the same brother that he sold. Wow. However, in this story, in God's perfect divine will, it was actually Judah who saved Joseph's life by actually, instead of leaving him in the pit, selling him as a slave. See, this beautiful story, what seemed like tragedy, God was using for his glory. So this is like the beautiful climax to this story, where what seemed like tragedy, God turned it upside down. And now we see the beauty of God's beautiful plan unfolding. So instead of killing him, he sold him, and it actually ended up benefiting him in the end. And this too will be something that's tied to the Messiah, Yeshua. So what happens? It's interesting to look at Judah's name as part of this story, because Judah's name in Hebrew is Yehuda. And Yehuda means a praiser of God. And from this name, Yehuda, we get Jew, because it's very much sounds like that. Yehuda, Jew. And it comes from the word Yehudi. That's Jew in Israel today. They're called Yehudi. And so Judah comes actually from a verb meaning yada. Yada means, now listen to this, to cast forth, to give thanks, to confess, to give praise, and to be open-handed. Look how even the meaning of his name comes into the beauty of this story. He's casting himself now in a humble state before this brother, and he is confessing. And he's retelling the story to the one who has the right to either sell him as a slave, put him in prison, kill him, or to bless him. And so this open-handed definition is really a picture of confession, because when we confess, this is such a beautiful story. When we confess and repent, we don't come with any excuses in our hands. We have to hold on to our excuses. This is what remorse and regret is. But when we repent and we come in humility, we come open-handed. And so here, Joseph is actually getting to see the repentance of this brother Judah, to see his changed heart. And he comes and says, I'm willing to die, to give myself for this brother. And this is exactly what happens when we confess and we're willing to confess ourselves before God. Something of the old self must die first in order for us then to have that relationship. And this is what is happening in this story. Judah is doing all this in front of Joseph, who represents the one who has the authority to take his life or to bless his life or to release him, or all of the things that God the Father has the authority to do. And so Joseph is a type of a Messiah in this picture. So look at his name, Yehuda, and yet it comes from the word yada. Let me show you another related word, or a cognate word. This is the letter Yod, and Yod means hand. So even the letter itself as a hand in this story is in his name. The ancient picture is a hand. So you're seeing the hand of God unfold, and then Judah coming open-handed. And all this is in the name of Judah. And look at this phonetic related word. The same word sounds yada as Judah's name, yada, except it ends with an ayin instead of a hey. An ayin is to see. An ayin means the eye. So yada with an ayin means to understand, to be confident, and to bring to your senses. Oh my goodness. Put these words in your book. Judah comes from yada, meaning to confess and be open-handed. That's what happens with repentance. And to know and understand your need to repent is another related word, where we see and we come to our senses. Do you see the beauty of this story? Oh my goodness. I love this language. And I thank you for those who've taken my Hebrew class several times and have said to me in emails, oh my gosh, after third, fourth, fifth time taking this Hebrew class, I am seeing my Bible so differently. And I'm seeing things unfold that I didn't see the first time through the Torah, or the second time, or the third time. But some of you are with me now in the fourth time cycle, and they're saying, oh my gosh, now that I know my Hebrew better, the Lord has just revealed so many new things to me. So see, this is why everything in Hebrew is cyclical. They teach in cycles, because each time we cycle through, it's just like your Bible. Things come alive because you're in a different place. So bring your book with you each time where you put these words in. And I promise you, your second, third, fourth time through the cycle, you will just love knowing more Hebrew. So when Joseph finally hears the true heart of his brother Judah, and this big offering of himself as a slave, he could no longer contain himself, and it says he wept. This isn't just weeping like I'm sorry about something, so I shed some tears. This is wailing. Have you ever wailed over something? I have. I would love to tell you a story, and I might tell you it at the end of this. I don't know. I'll let the Spirit lead. But there was a time when God showed me something so unbelievable that I wept with my siblings in front of them in humility over something that happened in my life. And I was with all my siblings, and I was with my only living parent, which was my mother. I'm going to tell the story right now because some of you leave after 5 or 10 minutes and then you might not hear this story. But we were at a family reunion, and my brother Steve had brought all five of us with my living mother to a memorial to remember our father who was no longer with us. So it was all five siblings and my mother. And she was standing in front of me, and I was looking at her with my siblings. And I had prepared a beautiful um, ceremony where I would show my siblings a video with everyone in it. And I couldn't figure out why I was so troubled making this. And the reason it was troubling to me, because I didn't have my five lost babies and their names included in this video. I had lost five children, and I won't go into all that, but I'd had four tubal pregnancies, and my fourth tubal pregnancy was a loss of twins. One was in my tube, and then 2 weeks later, I realized I was still pregnant, and I had a fifth baby in my womb, which I lost. And it was the only child that I ever held in my hand. When I lost it, I put my hand down to catch it, and I held it in my hand. And so these five children were a deep loss in my life. And it was due to a time in my life where I had lived a life of, should I say, promiscuous life. And due to that, I had many tubal pregnancies and lost what could have been mine, which were five children. And so we were standing there, and my mother was in front of me, and there were five of us standing there. And all of a sudden, God showed me what could have been in my life. And the Spirit came over me, and I began to wail over the loss and the sadness and the might have beens and could have beens and should have beens. And I fell to my knees and wept. And all my siblings and my mother surrounded me and just held me while I wept. I didn't just weep, I wailed. And they didn't know how to comfort me except to hold me. And this is exactly the drama of this story, where brothers and sisters had watched the sadness, the pain, and now we're there to hold me in my deepest, deepest moment of grief. And this is what's happening in this story. Joseph was like me. He was so grieved over the loss. And it's such a story that I identify with. And it's such a beautiful story to see finally all of us seeing the end of the story, which was this, that God redeemed me and gave me two sons. And this is what Jacob is going to have happen to him. he is going to actually see his two sons. And the Lord gave me two beautiful adopted sons, Eric and Stephen, to take away my sadness and pain. And this is exactly what's going to happen with Jacob. He's going to not only get back his real sons, but his two sons that came through his beloved wife, Rachel. And I so identify with this story. So I wanted to tell you that story because it's personal to me. So let's go back to this story now. Joseph had waited to reveal himself at the right time, in the right place, when all the hearts were right to hear this beautiful story that Joseph lives. And their hearts were ripe for repentance. So God's prophetic timing in the events of our life is never late. It's never early. If you've been suffering some tragedy or you feel like God has forgotten, realize that God is still working. You haven't seen the end of the story. He's never late or early. When our hearts are in perfect alignment with His will and His heart, there's a transformation. You will see and understand, just like Judah's name. And the transformation always includes 4 elements. And I want you to listen carefully. Stop thinking about anything else and just listen. The events that God will reveal, the reason all this happens, 4 things will have to line up. It'll have to be the right message to you by the right man or situation with the right method at the right moment. And this is what happened to me when God revealed to me His perfect plan unfold. There's so much more to this story that I don't have the time to tell you. But at the right moment, by the right man, my brother bringing me there, the right moment and the right message was that God had seen my pain all along and had a beautiful story to tell me and watch unfold with my family. So if you're going through something, wait for the right man or woman to give you the right message in the right method, in the right way, at the right moment. And you will have understanding, and your eyes will be open spiritually like never before. So I believe there's people listening to this message today that have heard that and understand that it's you that I'm talking to. It might be today, it might be tomorrow, it might be in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but it's coming. I want you to believe that. So Joseph dismissed everyone from his presence but the brothers, and he finally said, I am Joseph, Ani Yosef. His brothers were terrified, so shooken they were unable to speak. And Joseph then said to them, draw near. Come here, come close. Isn't this beautiful? This is what he says to them. Draw near when they threw him away. And it's in the name of this story, Vayigash. It's the same word. Nagash is the word to draw near. Then he said, is my father alive? Why? Why did he inquire about the father? Because Joseph's heart is tied to the father. Don't miss this in the story. Joseph's heart, he's taking the role of like the Messiah here, and it's attached to the heart of the Father. And so that's what he says to these brothers that come near in a new humble state, in a repentant state. And he says, this is the will of my Father. So he brings his father right away back into the story. And that's exactly what the Messiah did when he came on the scenes. And he said in his brothers' lives that believed in him, and even in those who rejected him, He says, I only do what my Father says. It's my Father's will that's unfolding. So don't miss that in the stories. And the brother's only response at this dramatic moment is, yes, our Father lives. Look at James 4:8. Jesus' brother, James, which is his Hebrew name, Jacob. In James, isn't that interesting that name means Jacob? We'll find this: draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts. It's no coincidence that we find that in the book of James, or Jacob in Hebrew, Jesus' brother. Wow, that's so beautiful. Look how you read the New Testament different. So Joseph was saying much more in his words, Ani Yosef, is my father alive. God's master plan had become clear, understandable, like an unveiling before these guilty brothers of their real hearts. Joseph connected their sin back to their father, Jacob. And in so many words, he was saying to them, you were wrong about my death. You lied. You called me irrelevant when I was first with you, a dreamer, and you actually mocked me. And isn't that what they did to Yeshua when he presented himself to the brothers for the first time in Israel? You were actually guilty and deserved judgment. And this is how Jesus began his ministry. Repent, the Spirit of God is at hand. This is how he was announced to the world by John the Baptist, or Yochanan the Immerser. And you were hateful towards me in the beginning, but now, in my grace, in my favor towards you, I have actually saved you. I have given you food to sustain you. And I'm going to bring reconciliation to all the family. This is what Jesus came to do the first time, but they rejected him. They killed him. And on the third day, he rose from the dead to bring spiritual reconciliation. And I'm going to speak about that more in a minute. Look at 2 Corinthians 3:15 and 16. This is in the New Testament. Whenever Moses is read, a veil covers their heart. He's speaking about the Jewish people. But whenever anyone, Jew or Gentile, turns to the Lord, like Judah turned to Joseph in a humbled, repentant way, willing to die even to his old self, the veil is taken away and removed. When the veil is taken away, this is such a beautiful word. Teshuvah means to repent. And it means to return, not just to turn around or to turn in a different direction, because you can turn and go the wrong way still, but it's a return to who you were meant to be. So see, the Judah and this whole story of the brothers being reconciled and then returning back to their father is exactly what Jesus came to do, is to take all the world, all nations, and return them to the Father, to return us all to who we were meant to be in the beginning. Remember, Jesus said, all we like sheep. This is what he was quoting Isaiah about all of mankind. All we like sheep have turned astray, but the good shepherd came to bring us back to who we were meant to be by transforming our hearts. And that's what this story is all about. Look at Zechariah 12:10. It says, when they repent, the Jewish people, they will look on the one they pierced and mourn. That word is eulogize, which means they're going to speak rightly about him they'll realize what they did to the one they pierced. And the prophet Zechariah actually announced that years, hundreds of years before Jesus came on the scene. And the brothers were speechless and terrified at this moment that they might suffer the wrath of Joseph. And today, many people walk away from religion because in their brokenness, they see God as pointing his finger down and saying, repent or you're going to hell. When really, God is saying, come back, return to me. I'll make things right. And they'll experience the forgiveness and mercy and grace. So it wasn't until Joseph embraced them that they began to have tears of reconciliation and relief. And this is exactly what happens. So Joseph told them, you didn't send me here, God did. He sent me ahead of you to bring a great deliverance. And this is a picture of the cross. When Jesus spread his arms out on the cross, it was like Joseph's embrace to the brothers. Isn't that beautiful? And he forgave them. This is the word salak, to forgive. So Joseph's arms were wide open with mercy and grace, just like Yeshua's, and he forgave them. So both Pharaoh and Joseph lavished the brother with 20 wagons of food and gifts to ultimately bless their father and bring back to Jacob. And when Jacob was told the good news, Joseph lives, his spirit was revived. And this is a picture of all of us when we're revived, knowing that Joseph lives, and that's like Jesus lives. And he says, I want to see his face. And so that's exactly what happened. He left Jacob and traveled down there, stopped at Beersheba, where they offered sacrifices and had a time of worship before they faced Joseph. And so look at how beautiful this is. Beersheba is where Isaac had made an oath with King Abimelech, and now the next generation, Jacob, stops at the same place to build an altar and to worship and to prepare his heart to go down to see Joseph. So Jacob knew at this moment God's prophecy to his grandfather was about to unfold. Remember, Abraham was told that his people would go down to Egypt and be in exile for 400 years. Jacob had this in his mind when he went down there, and he knew that this was the beginning. So there was a mixture of sadness and joy in this decision. And it's also a picture of us when we leave the old life behind. Jesus said you have to be willing to let everything go. And there's a letting go and a sadness of our past and our old ways and everything else. And then in joy, we have to be willing to go to an unknown place. And that's exactly what this story is also showing us here. And so he goes down, and God reassured Jacob that he would go with him. And he gave him a vision in the night, and he said, I am God, don't be afraid. He says, I'm going to go with you. This is another beautiful story unfolding. And I'm going to make you still a great nation. Don't be afraid. This is all part of the story. And so this was actually answered prayer. And after years of anguish, Joseph was going to see this wonderful son, Joseph. So God said, I will surely even bring you back. And again, Joseph's own hand will close your eyes. What a beautiful promise to Jacob at this point. So Joseph is greeted by Jacob, and he greets him. And here it is. They greet one another. They fall on each other's necks, and they weep and hug each other and kiss. So this is a beautiful picture of Jacob and the 11 sons now being redeemed and given the very best. And that's exactly what happens to us when we're born again, is God gives us gifts, and he draws us near, hugs us, kisses us. It's the story of the prodigal. Look at the land that he gives them. He gives them the best land right near the mouth where all the water is. of the Nile River, land of Goshen. And this word is related to the name of this parashah. Goshen means to draw near because it comes from the same word, nagash, to draw near. So isn't that beautiful? In the end of the story, Pharaoh gives them the land that means to draw near. And that's exactly where the Redeemer, Yeshua, will bring us back to the Father, where we can draw near to him in the final story told about in the final wedding feast, when we're all brought near to the Father at a beautiful wedding ceremony, the bride and groom being brought together in the house of the Father. So this is a beautiful story. And Benjamin receives 5 sets of clothes. You have to see here that five times everyone else is called the king's portion. And so this is a beautiful story of Benjamin being given the king's portion. And Benjamin means the son. And it's also a beautiful picture of the son, Yeshua, being given the king's portion. And what did it say above his head? King of the Jews. Wow. This is incredible how this story has so many things that relate to our New Testament. So I wanted to show you, here's Israel here, and this is where Pharaoh gives them the best of the land, which means I want them near. And oh, what a beautiful ending to this story. So Pharaoh then asked to see Jacob, and 5 brothers, there's 5 again, are brought before him. And he says, what's your occupation? And he says, we're shepherds. He wasn't afraid to say who he was. And Jesus said, if you're not ashamed of me, I'm not going to be ashamed of you in front of the Father. So the Father wasn't afraid. Remember, he was said, don't tell him. Joseph says, don't tell him that you're shepherds initially. But that's exactly what the Father says. And he ends up giving him the best land. So again, we're not ashamed. And he says, we're shepherds. And he says, oh, well, let me give you the best land. So I love that part of the story. So Jacob had prepared his heart at Beersheba with worship. And he comes before him in humility and with a grateful heart. And then he gives a blessing to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh becomes so prosperous. Instead of 5 more years, there were only 2. And they had stored up enough grain that at this point, as the people multiplied and they all came down, you're going to see this later in the future parashah. But because of all these blessings all at once, you're going to see the story have this dramatic ending. So it was to continue for 5 years. And so think about all these people coming down, bringing money for their grain. And if they didn't have money, they'd bring cattle. If they didn't have cattle, they'd give them their land. They promised them their land. And that, if they didn't have enough money and they didn't have land, they would actually give themselves. So you see, Joseph was in charge of all this. And this is the beautiful story of God making Israel a blessing to Egypt so that Egypt could then bless Israel when it multiplied and came out of Egypt with Moses. Look at this beautiful, beautiful story. So did God take him down there because he was punishing him, or was it part of his master plan? So look at Micah 5:2. But you, Bethlehem, though you're small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come one who will be ruler over all of Israel. This is part of this story. He said, whose origins were of old, from ancient times. Now look, I said this story was about Benjamin and Judah. This is their relationship now. In Israel, they're going to be right next to each other. Benjamin and Judah, Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Look at Matthew 2:6. But you, Bethlehem, city of David, in the land of Judah, are by no means least because something great's going to come from there. Among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be what? The shepherd of my people, Israel. Wow, 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 wow. Look at that. And then in the end, Joseph made servants, and they were told that they had to give, they could keep 4/5, but 1/5 had to go to Pharaoh. And they acquired so much land, and they were so prosperous that Israel became, Egypt became jealous of them. And that story is to be continued. But that's how this story ends. So Bethlehem was where they raised the lambs for the temple sacrifice in the New Testament, in the feast of Passover, when they brought Jesus into Jerusalem at Pesach. And so here I am in Bethlehem, and some little boy just hands me a lamb. I came out of a restaurant and he just threw him in my arms. And I felt like, oh my gosh, this is so symbolic. And so anyway, it's in Palestine, in the West Bank. And here is that beautiful picture. And then they have a actual monument to Judah in Yehud, Israel. And in Genesis, Judah would be blessed by his father Jacob, and he's called a lion's whelp, or the Lion of Judah. And here it is, they have lions on his tomb. So out of Judah and out of Benjamin come this amazing story that will unfold into the New Testament. And I hope you can see all the links. Look at in the Brit Hadashah in Ephesians 2. In our natural way, we were headed for God's wrath, just like these brothers. We were foreigners in a foreign land, and we were separated from the promises and covenants of the Jewish people. We, Gentiles, were like strangers, like Joseph's brothers. But we had no hope, but we deserved judgment, but we were brought near. Ones who were far away had been brought near, there's the word, Nagash, through the shedding of the Messiah's blood, forgiveness. He announced to you who were far off, the Gentiles, and to those who were near, like the Jews, the good news that through Messiah Yeshua, we both, Jew and Gentile, have access to one Spirit, meaning the one tree, where the roots would be through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then the tree would grow, and it would go through Judah, and then through King David, all the way to the Messiah. And this represents the tree of life. Israel is the tree of life, and we are grafted in through faith to the tree of Israel. And what I love about this is Yeshua up here in the top, the final one to be shown to the world, is that the top of a bough of a tree is called Emer, and it's the same word, Amar, to speak. And so God sent the Messiah to speak to the whole world about his love and his redemption and his forgiveness. Those are also two words you can put in your book. And we'll end with Luke 24, 25 through 32. Two disciples were walking along the road with Jesus, and they said to him, "We hoped that he, the Messiah, Jesus, would be the one to liberate us." They didn't know that it would be his suffering as the Messiah ben Joseph that he would come the first time. So Yeshua stayed with them, and as they were reclining at the table, he took matzah, broke it, and said a blessing, and their eyes, he's talking about the final Pesach supper with his disciples, their eyes were opened, and what? They recognized him. Just like in the story of Joseph and his brothers. It took Jesus the night before he was crucified and breaking bread on Passover with them before their spiritual eyes were opened and they actually recognized him. Wow. I'm going to stop sharing now. And I hope that 2021 will bring you close to the Messiah, Yeshua. He has his arms wide open and he's saying, come near, let me hug you, let me kiss you, let me embrace you, let me give you new life, let me give you the best that you've ever had. Yes, you're going to have to leave the past behind, to go to an unknown place, but you have to trust. You have to have faith in the one who died for you so that you could live for him. Won't you do that in 2021? Make this the best year you've ever had. And may God fill you with his Holy Spirit and transform your heart and mind so that you too can follow him with clear eyes and a new vision. But it takes a decision. Won't you make it? God bless you, and may 2021 be the year that you begin to walk with Jesus. God bless you. Shalom Aleichem.